Well, here we are back on Brilliant 2 in full refit mode still, and the latest project that we're tackling is Corian. I'm standing here next to one of our first completed pieces of Corian, which we're like super celebrating at this moment in time. It's not finished, but this has been our first sort of learning curve, and to see how we got to this point, watch on. This is Brilliant 2, a Kelly Peterson 44 built in 1978. This is us, the Smallwoods. And this is the story of our long overdue boat refit. Welcome along for the ride. Well, this is a bit exciting. We're off to Proserpine to go and pick up the Corian for the galley countertops from Gangamai Cabinet Makers, where it's been on order.
Hopefully we're going to squeeze it all in the back of the car.
Come with us. Well, this is it. This is the crate. And we've even got offcuts included here as well.
Lovely sunny chilly morning it is. So what I've come down to do today is to start on the first part of the Corian. So I've made yet another pattern. This is probably pattern number 95 or something, or 195, I don't know. Basically make my notes on the pattern. Means I've just got to put a 3mm chamfer or bull nose here, and that will enable me to just run a little bead of sealant in there. Same here where it's against the vertical face. Over here I will run up to the angle, cut the Corian at the angle so it comes up nice and close to the angled teak, and I'll probably have a little chamfer on the top of that as well. It just makes a nicer transition from the flat and sharp edge. So this pattern is ready to take away back to base and cut out the first piece of Corian. Well, this is the first piece of Corian that I've cut out. I started in this area here because it's just a small piece, just four-sided with a couple of angles on it. And if I was going to make any mistakes, it's better to make it on one of the smaller pieces. What I really wanted to do was get the techniques off pat before I started work on the galley pieces. So I've never used Corian before. I was quite surprised by the heaviness of it. It's very heavy, and it's sort of like cutting a cross between stone and plastic sheet. It's almost like perspex, but it's quite hard. So I'll just lift this up here, and as you can see, I've cut an angle here to match the angles on the fids. We've kept the original fids in here. The normal way that the cabinet makers cut this stuff out is it's done on a CNC machine with routers, and I don't have that equipment, so I've experimented with a couple of different ways. What I did with this angle here, it's about a 15 or 20 degree angle on both sides, is I measured the angle first and made myself a jig that I could hold up whilst I was cutting it. along a straight edge with the tool that you've seen before that I was using for all the laminates, the old bone saw that I have, the vibration saw. Nowadays they sell them as a multi-tool. It's basically the same thing. I managed to get a nice accurate straight line because of the metal ruler edge that I was cutting along, and the whole time I just used my plastic template to put it up against the side of the blade, and well, it's as good as we need it to be. So apart from a quick polish, this is ready to glue in, and then I'm going to move into the galley section, get on with that. So this is where the first piece of Corian in the galley is going to go. It's a long strip here, and we've got a bit of a cutout down here which we're going to have to make, and I'll just show you how it's going to fit. So what we've got here is a storage bin with a lid. The lid's going to be a piece of the Corian sheet. So what I'm going to do in here is cut this teak strip away. Our sheet of Corian is going to glue without the cutout. What I've got to do is make a template showing me where this is, so that I can cut this out accurately after this sheet has glued down. The reason I can't do this cutout before I glue it is because Corian's quite brittle, and if I do a cutout with only 1 inch and 3/4 inch wide strips here, it'll probably break while I'm trying to glue it in. So I've got to glue it in, do the cutout using the template, and then we copy route around the edges so that we get a perfect fit around here. And then I've got my strips of 30mm wide Corian cut, and they're going to form the edge here. So we won't see any wood here. We'll just have Corian edge and a lip that the lid will sit onto.
Again, I've never worked with this stuff before either. We've polished perspex and things like that before, and it's a bit like sanding when you go through the grades. So we've got these buffing discs which Tony from Gangabai Cabinet Makers gave us. So this is a coarser one, and then there's a slightly less coarse one. And apparently this is what you do. I'm not sure whether the camera will pick it up, but there's a sparkly fleck on the right side of the Corian here, and I guess this will just give it a bit more of a sheen. Apparently it doesn't make it super shiny. Anyway, we'll see what happens. We've had a bit of a blowout with the discs where they won't stick to our orbital. So we're doing a quick fix, getting a straight sanding pad which does stick, and using some contact adhesive to glue it to the back of the buffing pad, and hopefully that will work. here's my polished piece of Corian. I'm pretty sure the GoPro just won't pick it up, but there's these little sort of sparkly flecks in it. It's some kind of sparkly white colour. It's a bit of a satin sheen. It polished up really nicely. Looks great. Anyway, we're now ready to glue it in.
So this is the stuff we're going to use on the advice of the cabinet maker. Sikaflex, good brand. Kitchen and bathroom sealant, white. It's even got some anti-mold agents in it. It's a neutral cure, must be a neutral cure according to the cabinet maker. So that's what we're using.
Julian is just going to give the area down here where the little square bit's going a light sand, ready for that one. And I am going to come over here and sand this here, and then we'll be ready to glue them in.
Right, this is the moment of truth. We're going to glue this on with our sealant. This is the end of the template that I made to make this Corian piece in here, and I've just cut it in half, and I'm using this again to get the cutout position for this bin here. As I said before, I need to cut this after I've stuck the Corian down. So I'm just making a mark 1 inch inside around here so I can cut a hole there and do the rest of the Corian trimmings inside. A lot of shipwrights use this method, but they use hot glue to glue the strips together. Well, hot glue can move. Staples can't move. They completely resist any kind of shear movement.
Clever little sausage, aren't you?
Have my moments.
That cutting over the sink looked a bit haphazard. Don't try this at home, kids.
This only has to be rough because all I'm doing is just cutting a clearance hole in it really, and when it gets cut accurately it's going to be cut with the copy router against the vertical pieces that I'm putting in down underneath. So this is just an access hole, but I've got to be sure that I don't cut it too far back, otherwise I'll be in trouble. Well, that should be it. So we can glue this one in.
Yay!
Good morning, and I'm down here on the boat the day after we glued these bench tops in, and my first job is going to be to work on the cutout here. I'm going to cut this out and fit the internal trims, so I'm going to get stuck into that. What I've done here is I've marked the cutout from my template. Now if I cut along this line I should have extra ½ inch to spare, which I'll route off later. But just to make sure that I don't muck up a very expensive bit of Corian, the easiest way is just drill a couple of hole saw holes here and here so I can measure in there and I can make 100% sure that I'm not making a very expensive mistake. So this is a roughly cut top here for this bin, and to form the frame around it what I've done is screwed these cut pieces of Corian, and then using these pieces of polished Corian I'm going to form the step that the top sits on, and these are simply going to be glued on their backs to the pieces that are already in there.
And herein presents a challenge with Corian and glue. Well, the thing about Corian, one of the things about Corian, is that when you glue it to a surface like wood, which is what we've done with the square piece over in the corner and this first piece in the galley here, you use an ordinary common or garden neutral cure silicone, like a bathroom silicone. And that's what we've done. When you want to glue it to itself, you have to use a super expensive 2-part glue, which is completely different size to regular silicones. Here is a regular tube of silicone and a regular gun. Here is the little tube of Corian glue, and there's a miniature version of this gun which goes with this, which apparently is also quite expensive. So we were going to buy one of said guns, but the nice people at Gangamon Cabinet Makers said, no, it's okay, we'll lend you ours when we're not using it. I did kind of think at the time that's never going to work, because you always want to use something when someone else is needing it, or these things don't pan out. Anyway, it hasn't. So Julian put his thinking cap on, and this is what he's done.
I needed it today, so I decided to make one. Pretty simple. If you ever want to do this and save yourself some money, it's just a $10 applicator for normal silicone, a couple of bits of plywood, a couple of bits of dowel, a couple of bits of spacers and some tape here and there. Basically here with this you just put the tube in there, start cranking the thing up with the 2 bits of dowel in there and squeeze away. It took me half an hour to make that. I could probably make another one in 10 minutes. Minutes later. Been cutting the lid out for the first Corian bench top. This is the little one that goes over the storage bin. Using a combination of bone saw to get a nice straight edge and jigsaw, do a quick cut. I've given myself a 1mm clearance all around. Just going to round these edges off with a uniform 3mm radius, which I'm going to do with a 3mm radius router bit. Then I'm going to recess the stainless steel pull into the top using a jig and a router, hopefully. This is the pull which has to be fitted into the middle of it. This is a jig that I've made that I can clamp onto wherever I want the cutout. And when I run my router around the inside of the jig, it should make exactly that shape there. I haven't tried it on a piece of Corian, I've just done a test on a piece of plywood. So I'm going to put my lid to the side, and I've got a test piece here which we're not going to use for anything, but we've been given it, and I'm going to do a test. I've routed out the first step. There we go. Now obviously this has got to go up that way, so I've got to do the recess for this section here. It's a 3-step process. Put that in there. This is just in the test piece. I'm just going to take this apart, make sure it all fits. I had to grind the back of this a bit so it wouldn't come through the back of the Corian. So that's about as good as I'm going to get there. But now I've got a jig for it. The other ones for the fridge lids should all be the same. I'll just round the edges of this off a bit, and that'll be done. It'll be ready for a polish and put it in the boat. Hooray! First bit of Corian.
What result?
It's looking a lot better than the old stuff.
Absolutely. I don't know, hang on. Should we just do the old... yeah, don't know.
Let's have a look.
I think this is a vast improvement, don't you? So, at the end of all this, working with Corian, what have we learned?
Well, we've learned a lot. It's very similar to working with perspex. You don't want to put sharp corners anywhere in Corian. It could crack from a sharp corner. All the same tools that you use with perspex you can use on Corian. Orbital sanders, jigsaws, routers. It's very heavy. It's a cross between perspex and stone, really.
And I guess because it's so hard, you've got to make sure that all your blades are really, really sharp. It does blunt them quite quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah, and you'll know when your blades are going blunt because the epoxy in the Corian starts to melt, so it's time to throw that blade away, and it really blunts router bits very quickly as well. So be prepared to spend some money on router bits.
And the other thing I noticed was how sharp it was when we picked it up. So the edges from just as it had come out of being milled, by the time we got it home and we're putting it away, we were actually wearing gloves to do that, so we
Gardening
didn't cut
gloves.
ourselves. Yeah. So on the glue was an interesting new compound that we hadn't worked with before. I think it's actually a bit of it's the Corian substance itself, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's actually liquid Corian, and it comes in a little 50 ml syringe, and as you squirt the stuff out, it mixes together, and it's highly toxic, smells terrible, but it's fantastic stuff. You only need a little bit of it. It actually tacks in place within seconds, and within 40 minutes you can't separate it. When you use it, you've got to plan your moves, and because it is actually Corian, you can clean it up afterwards and you have an invisible joint.
Also, because it's Corian, you pick the glue to match the colour, shade, whatever type of Corian that you're using. So ours has even got that sort of shiny fleck in it that you can't really see through these cameras, but trust me, it does. So yeah, it's overall been positive experience so far. Now we've got to move on to the other side of the galley, which is the classic case of saving the worst to last.
Well,
so
you've got to learn your mistakes on
that's
the easy
right, you
bits.
have to practice first, and we definitely needed to practice first with this.
Yeah.
So we've got the really big pieces to do on the side of the galley that has the sink and fridge lids and the splashback and the horrible cupboard. Every boat's got a horrible cupboard. Ours is under the sink. So that's going to be today's job for you, isn't it?
Yeah, pull the sink out.
Well, we'll see you when we're on to that. See ya!